Have you ever lain awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the creak in the floorboards is just the house settling or something far more sinister watching you from the darkness? I remember the first time I heard about Sarah's encounter. She was just an ordinary college student, living in a cramped apartment on the edge of campus in a sleepy Midwestern town. It started innocently enough, with a package arriving at her door one rainy afternoon. No sender's name, no return address, just her name scrawled in shaky handwriting on the brown paper wrapping. Inside was an old, tarnished locket, the kind you'd find in a dusty antique shop. Sarah thought it was a mistake, maybe meant for a neighbor, but curiosity got the better of her. She pried it open, revealing a faded photograph of a young woman who looked eerily like her, with the same sharp cheekbones and piercing blue eyes. On the back, etched faintly, were the words, "I'm coming home." That night, as Sarah tried to sleep, she heard whispers. At first, she dismissed them as the wind rattling the old windows, but they grew clearer, soft, murmuring voices calling her name from the hallway. She bolted upright, heart pounding, and flicked on the light. Nothing. The apartment was empty, the door locked tight. But the locket, which she'd left on her nightstand, was now warm to the touch, as if someone had been holding it. Over the next few days, the whispers escalated. They'd come at odd hours, always when she was alone, echoing from vents or under her bed. Sarah started recording them on her phone, playing them back to friends who swore they heard nothing but static. One evening, as she examined the photo again, she noticed something new. The woman's eyes in the picture seemed to follow her, and a faint smile had appeared where there was none before. Desperate, Sarah researched the locket online, digging through forums and old newspaper archives. She uncovered a story from the 1920s about a woman named Eliza, who looked just like the photo and just like Sarah. Eliza had vanished after a fire destroyed her family home, presumed dead. But rumors persisted that she'd been seen wandering the town, searching for her lost child. Sarah's apartment building. It stood on the site of that very house. That night, the whispers turned to screams. Sarah barricaded herself in her room, but the door handle rattled violently. When she peeked through the keyhole, she saw a shadowy figure in the hall, wearing a dress from another era, its face obscured but for those familiar blue eyes. In a panic, she smashed the locket with a hammer, and the noises stopped. But the next morning, she found shards reassembled on her pillow, the photo intact, now showing two figures, Eliza and Sarah, standing beside her. The twist came when Sarah fled the apartment, only to discover in her family's old attic a birth certificate revealing she was adopted from that same town. Eliza wasn't a stranger. She was her great-grandmother, and the locket was a family heirloom that had been lost for decades. But why had it returned now? Sarah never found out, because the whispers followed her wherever she went, a chilling reminder that some family secrets refuse to stay buried. Then there's the tale from Mark, a truck driver who spent most of his life on lonely highways, hauling freight across the American Southwest. It was a moonless night in the New Mexico desert when he picked up the hitchhiker. The man stood by the roadside, thumb out, dressed in outdated clothes like he'd stepped from the 1950s, greased hair, leather jacket, the works. Mark wasn't one to turn down company on those empty stretches, so he pulled over. The guy introduced himself as Eddie, said he was heading to Albuquerque, same as Mark. They chatted about nothing much: weather, sports, the usual. But something felt off. Eddie's skin was pale, almost translucent under the dashboard lights, and he kept glancing at the rearview mirror as if expecting something behind them. As miles ticked by, Eddie started sharing stories, vivid tales of old Route 66 accidents, cars plummeting off cliffs, drivers vanishing without a trace. Mark laughed it off at first, but then Eddie described one wreck in detail, a semi-truck like Mark's, flipping in a storm. The driver ejected and left for dead. Happened right around here, Eddie said, pointing to the dark horizon. Mark's blood ran cold. That was exactly how his own father had died when Mark was a kid. A story he'd never shared with anyone. He pressed Eddie for more, but the hitchhiker just smiled, his teeth gleaming unnaturally. Suddenly, the truck's engine sputtered, lights flickering. Mark pulled over, popping the hood, but everything looked fine. When he returned to the cab, Eddie was gone, no footprints in the sand, no sign he'd ever been there. Shaken, Mark drove on, arriving in Albuquerque at dawn. He stopped at a diner, mentioning the weird encounter to the waitress. Her face went white, greasy hair, leather jacket. "Honey, that's the ghost of 66. Been hitching rides since the 50s. Died in a crash just like the one he described." Mark laughed nervously, but later, checking his dash cam footage, he saw Eddie in the passenger seat. Except in the video, Eddie's reflection in the window showed a mangled corpse, bones protruding, eyes hollow sockets. The shocking revelation hit when Mark realized the date. It was the anniversary of his father's death, and Eddie had mentioned a detail only Mark knew, his dad's last words, whispered to no one. Was Eddie his father? Returned to warn him. Mark quit trucking after that, but he swears on clear nights he still sees a figure thumbing for a ride in his dreams. Emily's story chills me to the bone every time I think about it. She was a nurse working the night shift in an old hospital on the outskirts of Boston. The kind with long, echoing corridors and rooms that hadn't been renovated since the 70s. One patient, Mr. Harlan, was in room 413, an elderly man with terminal cancer, always rambling about, the visitor who came at midnight. Emily humored him, chalking it up to delirium, until one night she heard footsteps in the hall, slow, deliberate, like someone dragging chains. Peeking out, she saw nothing, but Mr. Harlan sat bolt upright, whispering, "He's here." The next shift, Emily found Mr. Harlan dead, eyes wide in terror, a single handprint burned into his bedsheet. The coroner called it natural causes, but Emily couldn't shake it. Then patients in adjacent rooms started complaining of the same visitor, a tall shadow with elongated fingers, smelling of decay. Emily stayed late one evening, hiding in the supply closet near 430. At midnight, the footsteps returned, closer this time. She cracked the door, phone recording, and glimpsed a figure in tattered robes, face hidden under a hood, gliding toward the room. It paused, as if sensing her, and turned. Under the hood was no face, just swirling darkness with pinprick lights like distant stars. Terrified, Emily reported it, but security footage showed nothing. Digging into hospital records, she learned room 430 was once the morgue, and in the H's, a doctor named Harlan had experimented on the dying, claiming to summon guides from beyond. Mr. Harlan was his descendant, the last in the line. The twist. When Emily confronted the hospital admin, they revealed the building was slated for demolition because of unexplained deaths. But as she left that night, the visitor appeared in her car mirror, whispering her name. Emily quit, moved states. But the handprint appeared on her own sheets. One morning, her own hand, burned as if she'd touched something infernal. Was she now part of the curse, summoned as the next guide? Let's move to Jake's ordeal, a hiker who loved solo treks in the Pacific Northwest forests. He set out on a familiar trail one crisp autumn day. Backpack loaded, phone fully charged. Hours in, he noticed the trees thinning unnaturally, fog rolling in despite the clear forecast. His compass spun wildly, GPS glitching. Then he heard a child's laughter, echoing from deeper in the woods. Jake called out, thinking it was a lost kid, but the laughter turned to cries, pleading for help. Following the sound, he stumbled into a clearing he'd never seen before, with an old cabin at its center, windows boarded, door ajar. Inside, dust-covered furniture and walls scratched with frantic messages. It mimics voices. Don't follow. The cries grew louder from the basement. Jake descended, flashlight beam cutting through the gloom, finding a small figure huddled in the corner, a girl, back turned, sobbing. "Are you okay?" he asked. She turned, but it wasn't a girl. Its face was a grotesque mask of shifting features, eyes black voids. It lunged, mimicking Jake's own voice screaming for help. He bolted upstairs, barricading the door, but the thing pounded relentlessly, now using his mother's voice, begging him to open up. Signal returned briefly. He texted friends his location, but the GPS showed him miles off trail. Night fell, the pounding ceaseless, voices cycling through everyone he knew. At dawn, rescuers found him curled outside the cabin, babbling. The cabin had burned down decades ago in a fire that killed a family, including a shape-shifting entity locals called the Echo Demon, drawn to lone wanderers. Jake's photos from inside. They showed empty rooms, but one captured a reflection in a broken mirror, his own face, twisted into that grotesque mask. Has it latched onto him, waiting to mimic again? Now, consider Lisa's haunting in a suburban home she inherited from her aunt. The place was quaint, but from day one, objects moved on their own keys, vanishing, reappearing in odd spots. Lisa blamed forgetfulness until the nightmares started. Dreams of a woman in white, standing at her bed's foot, mouthing silent words. Waking, she'd find wet footprints leading from the bathroom, as if someone had drowned. One stormy night, the power out, Lisa heard splashing from the tub. Investigating with a candle, she saw the water rippling, a hand emerging, grasping the edge. She screamed, fleeing, but the house locked itself, doors jammed, windows fogged with breath not her own. Calling 911, the operator heard only gurgling on her end. Forcing the bathroom door, she confronted the apparition, her aunt, bloated and blue, whispering, "You let me die." Research revealed her aunt hadn't died naturally. She'd slipped in the tub. But Lisa, as a teen visiting years ago, had heard the fall and ignored it, thinking it a prank. The guilt buried deep, but the ghost knew. The shocking revelation, the inheritance papers, included a hidden letter from her aunt, forgiving Lisa but warning of the curse. She drowned intentionally to escape it, passing it on. Lisa sold the house, but the footprints follow her, a constant reminder that some sins drown you slowly. Derek was a paranormal investigator, skeptical despite his job, until the case at the abandoned asylum in rural England. His team set up cameras, EVPs, the works. Night one, orbs on footage, cold spots. But Derek dismissed them. Then, during a solo session in the electroshock room, he felt breath on his neck, a voice hissing, "Join us." Recordings captured screams not from the team. Derek saw shadows detaching from walls, forming humanoid shapes with elongated limbs. One grabbed him, icy grip burning his skin. Fighting free, he reviewed footage. The shadows were patients, tortured here in the 40s, their faces contorted in agony. The twist: Derek's grandfather was the doctor who ran the place, his name etched in hidden ledgers. The spirits weren't random, they were family victims, pulling him in as retribution. Derek burned the asylum files, but scars from the grip remain, and whispers call him back. Sophia's beach vacation turned nightmare when she found a message in a bottle washed ashore. "Help me." It read with coordinates. Curious, she sailed out, finding a derelict ship. Boarding, she heard creaks, then voices below deck pleas for rescue. Descending, she found skeletons chained, eyes glowing faintly. They rose, chanting her name. Fleeing, her boat sank, but she swam back. The twist: the bottle was from her ancestors' slave ship, the message a curse. Now, drowned souls visit her dreams, dragging her under. Tom's urban exploration in old subway tunnels led to horror. Flashlight dying, he heard trains on dead tracks. A figure approached, faceless, in conductor uniform. It handed him a ticket, his name, date of death tomorrow. Running, he emerged, but the ticket burned his pocket. Next day, a real train derailment nearly killed him. Twist: the figure was his future self, warning of a loop. He avoided death, but now sees faceless figures everywhere, tickets in hand. Rachel's doll collection grew sinister when an antique arrived, eyes following her. At night, it moved, whispering secrets only she knew. Smashing it released a mist that entered her. Friends noticed her changing, eyes like the doll's. Twist: the doll housed a spirit of a murdered girl, Rachel's twin, separated at birth, now merged. Rachel whispers to mirrors, collecting more. Finally, Alex's camping trip ended with howls not from wolves. A pack circled, eyes human. One transformed a man begging for death. Bitten, Alex changed under the moon. Twist: the pack was his lost family, cursed werewolves. He joined, but the revelation: he started the curse as a child, forgotten. Now, he howls eternally,